The House of Mystery presents Inside Writing, the radio show where authors discuss their writing process in all genres.
Hi, and welcome to the Julie South Show today. Now, with me today, this is a really special interview for me, because this is an interview of somebody who certainly in a spiritual sense and in a mediumship sense I would absolutely look up to. I'm really lucky to be joined today by Acorah, who is one of the world's most well-known and renowned spiritualist mediums. Clearly, in the UK, for my listeners in the UK, Derek will need no introduction whatsoever. He is a household name and is a much-loved medium in the UK and really across the world. Hi, Derek. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hi, Julie. It's my pleasure. It really is.
So, Derek, if it's okay with yourself, I mean, I know you're a family man. You've got Gwen, you've got your kids, you've got your dogs, and you're really open with people that follow you on Facebook. People are able to ask you anything. You answer them in your short videos. You're such a personable person, and I think that obviously comes with lots of experience of knowing who you are, knowing what it is your purpose is in terms of your spirituality. But of course it wasn't always like that, was it? Years and years ago, and that doesn't mean to say I'm aging you, but years and years ago,
yeah.
you began life as a footballer.
I did. And you see, what actually happened was, from a young boy, it seemed that I had a certain talent within sport. I played all sports. My love was football, still is to this day in sports. And I was getting watched by what we call the scouts from professional football clubs from the age of 11, I believe. Come the age of 13, I was so shocked and surprised that one of the major football clubs, or one of them that was going to become one of the major football clubs in the world years later, were interested in signing me as a schoolboy at the age of 13, that
wow.
being Liverpool Football Club.
Oh,
And
wow.
the great Bill Shankly was the manager, and the year I signed for them, 65 going to 66, that was the start. They came out of the second division of the Football League, and after 1.5 seasons, they were really, really playing and getting results, and it was just fantastic to be with such a great football club as a young boy, and Bill Shankly was just a fantastic man. He was like a father to us as young players. And of course, come the age of 15, they asked me to sign as an apprentice professional for them, which went against mum and dad's ideas. They wanted me to continue my education, but me being quite a strong-willed young man, and my love for football, I just wanted to be, my dream was to play for Liverpool Football Club one day. So I convinced mum and dad, because dad had a cancer sign for me, to say I could sign for them. And I was on the books at Liverpool Football Club, and I went through all the different junior sides, and I was playing quite regularly for the reserves, but tried the best I could. And there was a lot of players, young players at the club at the time, all very good players, and a lot of them, just like myself, didn't make the grade to the first team. Mm. So, of course, the manager's only got one thing in mind, is we'll have to offload these young players and see if they go and do it elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened with Bill Shankly in Liverpool. Broke my heart at the time, like it did a number of other players, but I did successfully go on and play in the lower leagues for a number of years. Ended up finishing my football, actually, in Australia, of all places. What happened there was it was very successful. I started doing a coaching badge. I was the player of the year the first 2 years, and we won cups and leagues, and it was a really joyful time for my young wife and my, at the time, young baby son. It was a great lifestyle. We enjoyed it, but I got a cruciate ligament injury.
Wow.
And that again broke my heart. I had an operation, and I was out of the game for 6.5 months. He tried to bring me back, played 2 games into the league, and wallop it went again, but this time for good. The club specialist said, "Oh, you've got to think of something else. Football is not now an option to you." And
devastating. That's every boy's dream, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, even my wife and me, I don't mind admitting it. We sat, when we got that final diagnosis, if you like, sat in our home in South Australia, in Adelaide, and we both hugged each other and cried. And
I'm sure.
Unashamedly, I cried in the sense that it was the only thing I'd really known and the only thing I really wanted to do or be.
Yeah.
And my wife realised that. But she, being the good wife, she said, "Now, come on, get your pecker up. There are other things in life as well." And she helped me greatly. And in those days, she said, "I'm going to tell you things you told me when we first met, Derek. You talked about your lovely grandmother that was a wonderful medium, and she had the gifts, and you also have the gifts." And I said, "Well, yes, but I don't really, want to do that sort of thing, because at first I was a little dubious, a little bit worried, a little bit, I suppose, a percentage scared of the unknown. And but I knew where I was in the world of playing football. So it was a giant, huge step, a leap, if you like, that made me, we came back to England after a month or so and said, "Well, okay, we're going to have to settle back here, and I'm going to have to sort something out. What I've got to do as a breadwinner and, looking after my family." And it was funny because this is where my journey began. Because I'd only been home about a month. And no matter where I'd go into a store, a large store, like Tesco's or Aldi or something, or Morrison's, and a woman or a man would come up to me, and could be with my wife and my small son Carl, and start talking to me in this strange way, and saying, "You now know what you've got to do. You now know where your life is going to happen. You following your grandmother, the gifts." It was a little bit too much for both of us, because we said, no, we object to this.
Yeah.
It was people infiltrating our lives, the total strangers to us, but stopping thinking that they can tell us things about my future and what I should be doing. It was a bit mind-boggling at first.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So what we did then was, my wife said, "Look, I've looked at this place here in the weekend paper, and it's a spiritualist church where spiritual people, mediums like your grandmother, actually do demonstrations. Let's go along and have a look at this thing for the first time, Derek." So we went along, and we sat there. There would have only been about maybe 60, 70, 80 people in this quite small room. And then, of course, the medium walked in, introduced herself. It was a woman, the first one I ever saw. And she just gobsmacked me. She astounded me. Because I was right at the back of the room.
Right.
I thought I can just fade in with the paintwork. I won't be noticed, And she came out and she said, "I need to speak to Derek." Of course, my wife gets hold of my hand and, "Hey." And she said, "Yeah, I've got to speak to Derek. He's here because I've got a lovely lady who's come to say a big hi to him, a big hello, and she loves him dearly." Well, I wouldn't speak out.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether I should speak out because it was my first time. So I was listening all right. Then she said, "Look, there's only one Derek in this church here. It's a spiritual church, and he's at the back, according to his grandmother. Where are you at the back?" Of course, everyone on the back row, there was men and women, all looking at each other, and there was only me. No one had put that. So I said, "Put your hand up." So I said, "This could be for me, yes?" And she said, "It is you, because your grand's telling me it's you." And I said, "My grand." So I questioned her, which I realised years on you don't, but I did.
Yeah.
And because I was just trying to get my mind around it. And I said, "Okay, as stupid as it may sound, if you're telling me you're talking with my grandmother, tell me how she died." And she said, "My dear, can you..." And she said, she suffered with a cancer that spread in different parts of her body. Mm. And then she said, to say 56 to him that it'll just rock him. He'll know. Said
Yeah.
to me, so I don't know what she means here. She said 56 was that year. And I said, oh my God. I put my hands, or my head in my hands, and I said to my wife, that was the year of her death, you know, when she was 56.
Yeah.
She was a relatively young woman. Then she brought along two of my grandfathers, one of my uncles, even my baby sister.
You were certainly getting a message to
Wasn't
get
I?
out there.
They were really giving it to me strongly, weren't they? My younger sister was a baby, a child, you know, called the cot death syndrome.
Yeah.
She was only a matter of weeks old, and she was found. She passed over, and there she was coming through as a young woman to say hello to her brother. Well, that alone that afternoon, I stayed behind and spoke to this lovely woman medium who was actually from Scotland. I said, I've never met you before, sir. She said, but what I was really saying is, you are going to do this work like me and more. And because it's meant for you. You're allowed to play the football. She brought the football out.
Wow.
She said, for a period of time. And she said, in many years to come, you'll hear about the great diaries that your grandmother wrote, which I've got them presently in my company. And my grandmother, who was a medium, a very lovely medium, very lovely lady, she wrote these 3 diaries and recording from the age of 9 right up throughout my life, and still things are still happening that are written in the diaries to finish them off. The diaries finish off in 14 years' time.
That's mind-boggling.
It is. It's just like bonkers.
Yeah.
But I've got them here. All my family have scrutinised them, read them, and said, oh my God, look at this that happened with Derek and Liverpool Football Club. Because in those years, when I signed for Liverpool Football Club, television wasn't quite there. There's no such thing. Everyone had radios. But in the diary, Gran has drawn a rough drawing of a box. And she's put T-E-L-E. And then underneath it, she's got G-R-A-N-D and a gap. I went onto television at Granada TV in that year to do my work. I did so many shows for Granada, Out and About with Derek, a program that they wanted me to do even before Most Haunted was even in existence. Out and About with Derek Acorah were a production crew going to haunted locations, going to old homes, going to places where there could have been, you know, case history of, I don't like using the word hauntings, but of that nature, of the paranormal. And I was doing that, and that's where the idea came for Most Haunted, would you believe?
Did it scare you, Derek, having with, I mean, you haven't mentioned yet sort of at what age you knew that you had this gift also, but did it scare you knowing just how powerful that gift can be? I mean, with your grandmother writing those 3 kind of, I suppose, well, futuristic predictions about your life.
Nostradamus, isn't it?
Amazing.
It scared me in my younger years because I had my first encounter, let's say, hearing encounter with someone that it was like a disembodied voice to me. I'm sitting in my mum's lounge. Dad was a seafarer, but he happened to be home, thankfully, at that time. We're all sitting in a lounge. At that time, there was 4 kids in our family. And it was a Saturday afternoon, never forget it. And I was reading a magazine. It was a football magazine, as you can guess. And I think it was about Bobby Moore, the captain of England.
Yeah.
And I heard this voice. Now, I knew it was in the room, but I'd never heard this voice before, saying Derek 3 times. Derek, Derek. And then something else. And I thought, look around the room. I thought, am I going mad? So I left the room. I went up the stairs quietly, went into my bedroom. No, tell a fib. Went into the toilet because I was a bit shocked. Yeah. Closed the door, locked the door, and sat there. Nothing. I thought, oh, I'm going mad. Came out of the bathroom, went into my bedroom, sat on the end of the bed. Then it happened again. Derek, and then he was telling me he was my spiritual guide. He
Right.
said, I know you can't see me at this point, but you can hear me. I can see that. I'm just, in other words, popping in to say, you will get to know me over the next months, over the next years. You'll know everything about me. I'm to work with you spiritually. We've been designated together. Now, when all this happened, I must have lost the colour in my face, because I went downstairs and I thought, I can't speak to my dad. I can't speak to Mum. I can't speak to Colin or Bob or my brother and sister about this. However, at that time I didn't. And that evening, I was asleep. And next minute I heard this like sound on the floor, although we had carpeting, this like shuffling sound, and like a feeling of someone sitting on the bed. And then I knew I was totally awake. I quickly switched the light on, and there I saw Sam.
Right.
So it was in sync.
And how old would you have been at that time?
And I could see him. I was 7. But before that, even younger, in my grandmother's house, I saw a man. And that man looked real to me, in the sense that I could see his features, the clothing he was wearing, and that turned out to be my grandfather, who had been married to Gran, who was a seafarer like my dad, who had a terrible, horrific accident away at sea in the Indian Ocean, and the damage to his body was so severe that before they could get him to a shore-based hospital close in the Indian Ocean, wherever, septicemia set into his wounds, and he passed over. 2.25 years before I was born. I knew nothing about him.
Right.
So Gran knew from that age that I would follow in their footsteps.
And what about your parents? Were your parents psychic?
No, it skipped them. In actual fact, Mum was very sympathetic, because she knew her mum had experienced all these things and realised it was true. But where Dad was concerned, Dad came from a very strong religious Catholic background, Catholicism, and that was all taboo. Yeah. And he did not like the idea of his wife being the daughter of a medium. However, he loved my mum, and I suppose in that instance he put up with it. But it was a little bit too much for Dad, realising later that there was another one in the family that was going to follow in the shoes of Gran, and it cracked my dad up. I was fine when I was a footballer, Derek. Oh, my uncles, all supporters of football. I was at Liverpool. Oh, I was the bee's knees, so to speak, in the family. However, when the football stopped, and later on, it was apparent that I was going to follow in my Gran's footsteps, but in maybe a different way, Dad couldn't cope with it. Dad didn't want to cope with it. Dad, on a number of occasions, made the statement, I do not want a son of mine dealing with something he doesn't understand, doesn't know the power of, doesn't know the depth of it, and the evil. God, and he'd start saying things like, from the scriptures, God stated, about you leave the contacting of spiritual souls, leave them in the heavenly state, in that eternal sleep. And of course, there was a terrible, but Mum understood deeply, and she said, this is your calling, Derek. This is your, even though it's only happening at this time, this is your calling. This is what you've been sent here to do. It's your vocation. As you get older, as your Gran used to tell me, he will realise it. And Mum said, and you will. So many years later, when I was doing things everywhere, and with my work and touring and going to different places, my mum was so proud.
I'm sure.
So proud. Proud for Gran, that all the quotes that Gran made. And you know what? I'm just going to tell you a little, very true story. I was in another country doing a demonstration. It was in America, actually, in Boston. And lovely place, lovely people. And it was just a whistle stop in do my demonstration, my show, and back home. And there, I was approached. There was a number of mediums in the audience, and this one particular medium walked up, a very lovely lady. She was from, I think she was from Pennsylvania, actually, but she was in Boston. And she said, keep on doing your work. You're a wonderful instrument of spirit, and your clarity, and this, that, and the other. And, by the way, there's a gentleman here with me called Frederick. And I said, oh, really? And I said, what's he saying? And he's saying, to tell you, son, he's so blinking proud of you. And he's awful sorry he didn't realise, he didn't understand when he was here.
That's really touching.
Well, that put a lump into my throat, into my heart.
I'm sure.
And, I told all the family, and they said, well, he's reached you from across the veil to tell you that.
Yeah. And I had exactly the same conversation with somebody probably about 2 hours ago, where I said, yes, actually, when spirit pass over, they may have the same kind of characteristics, but they don't want to see you in pain, and they do want unfinished things to be said, and they do want to make sure you're okay. And so you kind of listen out for that. That's really important. And we do have that once we pass over, that kind of resolve, and we start to see things for what they are, because we feel things in a different way.
Absolutely.
And when you were talking just now about that when you're having those experiences, and how supportive people need to be around you, and how it's so important, especially you were talking about the age of 7. I think one of my closest friends was having her young lad was in his very early teens. He was experiencing activity. He was saying he could see people. And the first thing she did, she believed every word he said. And she Googled, she found me on the internet, and she said, these are the experiences he's having. And we unpicked it all. And he was absolutely having those real experiences. Whereas maybe if she'd taken a different route, he might have been, unfortunately classified as maybe having a mental health problem, etc. But he absolutely has those. It's very difficult when you're working, you're understanding the experiences of young people. But certainly that absolute support. I mean, if any of my children said that they were seeing or hearing, I would absolutely go with that.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I've been very fortunate, but I've thought about it. If I'm meant to do this way, looking back after all these years, surely it would be the wisdom of spirit to make sure that the people that were around me could be there for me, buffeting all the negative stuff that has always hit me to certain where to go. And, the spirits have not let me down. I have my mother, apart from Gran before she passed, then my lovely wife, and also my family, my children and grandchildren. My nephews and nieces, they're all, I'm a very fortunate man. Yeah.
And I think when I had early experiences with seeing a cat, I would always see this cat. But if I looked at it, it would disappear. So I'd see it in my peripheral vision. And it wasn't until much later then, I'd had my children, and a bit later on, I was chatting to somebody who was actually developing my marathon running plan. And they... I just had this urge to talk to him about a picture I could see, and then I spent 3 hours giving what you could only say was so much absolutely astounding accuracy of information. And, I was shocked by it. I was taken aback, because I didn't know where that had come from. And
I mean, the thing is, I went through that stage like every instrument or medium who's developing, because as you understand, naturally, you realise that no matter what age, what experience you're at, the years you put in, you're always developing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right to the very last time that before you say au revoir to this planet, and then go on that journey to see where your rewards are and stuff like that, and settle and rest and stuff like that. So you know this, but as the folk that don't know it, what can I say? I know I'm pushing it forward a bit, but what became apparent to me was roughly about 18 years ago that the reality to me of spirit, to the evidence the validation,
Yeah.
the truth, all that put together was sufficient for me to say, I will stand by this no matter how rough, how hard it gets, where the skeptical mind is, cynicism, downright ignorance. I will allow my shoulders to be broad enough to accept what they've got to say. But one thing that's always stuck in my core is this: no matter what gets said, no matter what gets accused, no matter what is put out there to the public media, nothing will stop Derek Acorah as an instrument of spirit working, because that's what I'm here for.
Absolutely, and thrilled to hear it, because I mean I will come on to that in a bit, Derek, because you've had your fair share of people giving you some criticism, which if you're in the public eye, no matter what field you're in, you will get that, but it can be particularly painful. But I think in terms of for you, when you spoke about your mum, and you obviously got a lot of support from your mum to develop forward. What about your own children? Are they showing signs? Have they shown signs of?
Well, I've got a son, I've got a daughter, and I've got 2 granddaughters, and it's only initially linked with Carl, my son, the firstborn, and he said a long time ago. I mean, he's not a youngster. Carl now he's a 40-year-old man.
Yeah.
He's realised when he was seeing and things and saying, Dad, I don't like this, Dad, I don't. And I said, okay. So I tried to calm him like my gran did with me. I tried to show him, what the goodness of things and so and so. And he stuck. Where I wanted to be a footballer, this is the ironical thing. Would I have then entered mediumship unless that happened to me as an injury? Would I change Wales? I doubt so.
Yeah.
However, where Carl is concerned, he wanted to be a certain thing, and he had it in his mind for some reason. He loved graphic things. He loved anything to do with graphics. He loved it. He's now presently, and has been for a lot of years, he started an apprenticeship of a very good company in printing.
Yeah.
Then he went to colour printing, and then he's really advanced and what have you, and he's got a very nice standard of life. And, his family's got 2 daughters, they're my granddaughters. And if you spoke to Carl, he's very happy in the company of when I'm speaking about spiritual matters, experiences he still has, but doesn't denounce them. He knows they're happening, he knows they're there, but he doesn't want to link in with it.
Yeah.
You see, so everyone's got an appraisal of things. And at first, I suppose I could have said, and said, well, son, you see me, they're staring you in the face. Why aren't you recognizing it? Oh, but Dad, I am recognizing it. Things happen in my home. He said, but I don't want it to be the whole epicenter of my life.
Yeah.
I've got my wife, I've got my daughters, we've got a good lifestyle, we all work hard, we're happy. I'm just happy with that, Dad. And so I leave it be on that. But he's the one who had the gifts, yeah.
Cool.
But we all have a decision. And we're not pushed into it. You may say, well, how about you, where you were just, well, certain people are meant more than others to do.
Yeah.
That's what I found out.
I think it's a hard thing to describe, but it's certainly for myself, it was very much a question of, once that experience had happened, I just knew what it was. Yeah. And my mum had always been very interested in spirituality and mediumship. Yeah. And I remember when I was 12, she had tickets to go and see Doris Stokes in London, the great Doris Stokes. And
the great Doris Stokes, yes.
Yeah, and actually when it happened, when she actually had these tickets, she couldn't go. She just couldn't bring herself to go. And I went at the age of 12.
Did you?
Which was a little bit kind of maybe unusual. I'd never been really. I'd seen Mum's books around, but absolutely loved it. Not thinking at the time that my experiences with seeing this cat was linked to, being quite spiritual myself. So, I feel very fortunate to have had that experience, to have been able to see Doris on the stage and to kind of have. She
was a wonderful instrument, a wonderful medium,
absolutely.
and. My gran knew Doris, and Doris knew Gran. even though she was in the south and Gran was up north. They'd often converse, letters and what have you. And so, of course, before Doris Stokes passed over, naturally, Gran had already versed her in my abilities, if you like, yet to be seen. So she had a profile on me, did Doris. And before she passed, I did manage to speak to her. I went to one demonstration. She was just absolutely stunning, spellbinding. Her accuracy and her links with the world of spirit and also her guides was just phenomenal. Probably never to be seen again. Who knows?
She was amazing, and I still remember that experience to this day. And some years later, and I read all her books. After I went to see her, I then kind of worked my way through all of her books, and very inspirational and so humble and down to earth.
Oh yes.
She just made mediumship comfortable, didn't she? She made mediumship open for people and for it not to...
Well, you know what? Her humility, that's what struck me. Her humility at her standing was just phenomenal. Her understanding of people's temperament was unbelievable. I remember speaking to her, and it was just off the voice vibration, which it was Doris that said, I should try this. That's before I went to Granada Breeze. Voice vibration, be the first ever. Yeah. You've got the ability to do it. Try it, son, try it. And I did. And that was it. That was like 6-7 years with a major television network doing... I started off in one day or one evening doing a live show. By the time a year had gone through, I was at Granada Studios 5 days a week.
How did that break come for you, Derek? How did that happen for you? What was your experience?
I'll tell you how this came about. I was doing a lot of radio work, being invited by Radio Merseyside, where I was, Liverpool, just around the corner from my office, Radio City, again, Liverpool, Red Rose in Lancashire, a number of them. And I spent 8 years with the great James Whale on Talk Sport. I used to do a 3-hour slot there, just opening myself up to people by the voice, and that was a remarkable experience. James, when I first arrived at the studios, he came out before we went in, and he said, now listen, you've got one big thing to do for me here before I introduce you to the public out there. A bigger, wider audience than even Granada, because we go all over the world. He said, if you, excuse the base words now, because a lovely man, very honest man, James. If you cock up, he said, I will back the cock up and say, get off my show, never to be seen again. So before you come to the studios, do you understand what we're expecting of you? And I shook. And I said to my wife, oh, God, Gwen, she said, you're saying you don't think you can do it? You've been doing it for 6 years at Granada.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, get in there and work with spirit. And I did. Now, I was only invited on for 1 hour, just at one time. He'd been inviting mediums from all over the country, even abroad, to do these 1 hour specials. And so I did that hour, and he took his earphones off and he said to the producer, I don't believe this. I do not believe he spoke in systematically to 9 people in different parts, not of just this country, this world, and the accuracy seems to be people saying, oh my God, how do you know that? So he said, will you stay on for the next 2 hours? Because he's in London, I'm from the north, but at least, they booked me a hotel, so I stayed on. And that was my next 8 years, every Sunday.
Wow.
Sunday evening, I'd be there with James Whale, talking to people across the world. And so, all these different things that spirits have guided me to, not one of them have I orchestrated it.
Yeah.
The people I've met, I've not orchestrated it. It's not by chance, I know that. God, the last 47 years. My belief, my inner core belief, goes beyond a belief, goes beyond a faith, goes to a word called my commitment that I promised before I incarnated into this life with spirit has become apparent to me. I was meant to do this, like a lot of other mediums.
So how does your mediumship work for you? Because obviously we all get information in different ways, and many people.
Mine started off with clairaudience, where I could hear.
Yeah.
And I demonstrated with the clairaudience for a couple of years, and then I found just in a natural way, I come into company of other mediums, more, if you like, experienced. I'd been around a lot longer, and they said, your capabilities in clairvoyance are going to develop, so get ready for it. Right. So, of course, that came. So, whereas at one time I was only hearing spirit, then I could see spirit, and then clairsentience was always there with me. I could always sense when I walked into a room whether there was spirit energy there, whether it be negative or positive. But then what happened, which I wasn't really happy about, but I got told by Sam later on, it was meant to be, that when I used to do my live demonstrations, obviously the contact and the link and the connection with the loved one for a person in the audience, something else, a little added extra, would be thrown in there, using my psychic abilities. Yeah. And the psychic abilities are poles apart to, a direct link with the world of spirit. And that miffed me a bit. I thought, well, what are they going to say to me then? Well, they're going to say their observances to prove to their loved ones that they do visit them whilst they're in their own homes and listen to conversations when they're visiting, and if some kind of guidance from a mum, a mother, or a father, which they would give if their children were in problems when they were here, it still is a fact that they're concerned, and they would give them guidance. Now, at first, I wasn't sure about that, but I thought, I think this is a wonderful thing. Absolute wonderful thing. Because if that's mum and it's dad, and I'm being used as a conduit, as an instrument of spirit, and I'm telling them something responsibly, and if I can tell them something that their mum or their dad say, this is the way you should go with this, because...
We at Wondery, creators of Dr. Death, Scamfluencers, and Over My Dead Body, go deeper into complex true crime stories to give you an inside look at the facts. And now we're launching the ultimate true crime fan destination, Exhibit C. It's truly criminal. Wondery's Exhibit C gives you the detective's lens of all of the evidence, taking you step by step through the twists and turns of each true crime case. Join the Exhibit C online community to access exclusive show merchandise, member-only content, and to hear directly from top criminal and social justice experts, witnesses, and investigators as they take us beyond the evidence and into the case file. Join now by following Wondery Exhibit C on Facebook, or find us on the web at WonderyExhibitC.com and listen to true crime podcasts on Wondery and Amazon Music. Exhibit C. It's truly criminal.
We got stronger foresight than you back there in the physical world. If you take notes to it, you'll see it work. Now, oh my gosh, did I see it work? People making contact with me a week later, 2 weeks later, saying, oh my God, you told Mum said to go to the solicitor because of the situation, what have you. I went, and it's all worked out well. And you're getting these letters of correspondence, sackloads. I've had sackloads. My home, it's quite a big home here, up in the lofts, as they call it, the loft area, I can promise you, and I'll keep every single letter. I've got big black bin bags of letters that have been sent to me from all over the world over the years. I mean, there's millions up there, not thousands or hundreds. There's millions. So, spirits have touched their lives. Spirits have moved them. Have them moved to a realization that where's all this coming from? If it's not coming from loved ones who've moved on onto the part of the journey. Death's not death. It's a transition. A transition to a higher consciousness of our understanding of who we are. We're eternal. We can never perish. And this is what, as I got...
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would, because a lot of people will struggle with. They'll hear mediums talk about things like levels, planes,
yes,
crossing over. What angels?
Well, right. There we go. Right. In the world of spirit, comprised of the world of spirit, there are so many levels, dimensions, and each dimension is worthy of the soul coming over who's progressed. In other words, a mum might go over, and some people don't like the idea of this, a mum might go over after her mother, how many years later, and suddenly they're not really together at first because the learnings of the grandmother far outride and outreach what the mother had to do in her physical life.
Yeah.
So she had more hardship, so she's going to reap the rewards of going to a higher plane of life rather than the daughter. But the eventuality is they do join up, okay?
Yeah.
And if we can put that into perspective in the sense that the only way we can achieve this is what, in certain religions, the belief system is there, that's for certain, of reincarnation and, having so many lives, going back over to the world of spirit for a period of time, resting, enjoying, that's the fruits of your hard labor, and then coming back again. If you ask the question, does Derek believe in reincarnation? Oh, absolutely. I've had it proven in many, many ways in my physical life about this, reincarnation, meeting people, and so on and so forth. In actual fact, my next book comprises of an awful lot of these facts that I've experienced, not just in one country, all over the world, meeting people in reincarnation, people, and giving the evidence of what they were. I've got the whole proof of it, all documented. However, one of the biggest questions, the hardest question, whether it be a non-believer or a believer, has to cope with is, look, mum's gone over, dad's gone over, I feel really lonely without them. I'd have a reassurance if you could tell me that I will meet them eventually, and I always give that reassurance, say, yes, as sure as night follows day, that will happen, that's the system. Yeah. There are so many questions that, from so many people about something maybe they don't understand, they want to understand, they're ignorant about, or they've just not plainly been explained to, all this system, the great system. So the world of spirit comprises of my knowledge, of the dimensions, which are actually the lowest dimension to our planet Earth is very close to us, actually. It's intermingling with us. It's unseen by the naked eye. It's unheard by the ear. But in your temperate state of awareness as an instrument of spirit, you can interlock with that very quickly. Yeah. And when doing so, you can get so much information. I call it getting information from the great pool of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So that first interaction with that great pool of knowledge is quite close to us. And this is why when we get visitation from our loved ones, they come into that lower level in order for them to come into this atmosphere, this ether. One of the most difficult things. Something that can never change, that I was told so many years ago, maybe over 50 years ago, and this is unreservedly this, is that most spirit people, when they, through their love and want, even if it's the first time they've tried it since passing over, bless them, they're told that they can do this, they have a go at it, they come into the atmosphere, and it's like them hitting, through our senses, a winter time, in any country, you'll always get to a point where there's going to be a deep fog, ice, cold temperatures. We call it in England, maybe they call it the same in other countries, the peace super of fogs, where it's that bad, if you walk in it and you're breathing, you cough, and stuff like that. Now, it's like that coming into this atmosphere to our loved ones, and they have to adjust their acceptance of this atmosphere in order for them to get through. And it does relent and it does relax, and then they can see you, they can hear you in your atmosphere. If I was to take you to their homeland, if I had the power to do this, not you yourself because you're a learner, but if I could do that with a person who's not, what you'd experience is the opposite to what your loved ones are experiencing when they're trying to come into this atmosphere. And what it is the brightness would be that stunningly sharp, it would blind your eyes.
Wow.
That's the heavenly state of dimension. So, both ways. And this is the reason why we're not taken over. Because they can cope with the cold temperature, the peace soup and what have you, because what are they? The instruments of love, soul, non-perishable. But the fear, and this the knowledge that's come through, the fear is, if they were to try, and they're capable of doing it, especially in our sleep, when our conscious mind is at rest and our subconscious mind comes into play, scientifically, they have thought about this in the past. Yes, we can bring that. However, what would happen to the physical state of awareness when we brought them back from the sleep to awake? And the answer was probably fatal heart attack, or something would happen that would damage our physical health, because the spirit is still within the physical. Our loved ones are not.
So for the purpose of our listeners, when we talk about that, a lot of near-death experiences, people describe, don't they, that absolutely blinding light. Yeah. Would you say that's in line with what you've just been
exactly
about?
Yeah. That's what they bring with them around their aura. They bring that bright, blinding light of where they come from. That's why when people talk about sightings of angels, when they see them in this glow, that's what they're bringing with them.
And I think
their habitat, from where they live.
It wasn't long ago I interviewed somebody who talked a lot about near-death experiences. So what you've just described in a really, kind of simplistic but really down-to-earth way, Derek, has kind of made that link for a lot of listeners. So that's been really useful.
Well, you see, I've always born into this life. I'm meant to be a down-to-earth sort of man, which I will. I can never change. I wouldn't want to change anyway, but it's a case of, in my explanation of an experience or what my knowledge, what I've been shown or given, I will explain it in the most simplest of ways anyway.
And I think as a developing medium, sometimes you can't fully understand something, and then another medium will describe it, and you'll go, that's it. It's exactly that.
Well, look,
exactly
you've said it yourself. So, look, as a developing medium, you haven't got to that point. I'm not just using you or saying it could be anyone in that level of development, but someone comes along who's a little bit further progressed and then opens your eyes up into your understanding of something you've not quite known, but you've got to get to know because you're progressing and developing. And that's what it's all about. Every day in every way, development is happening. It doesn't matter what stage you get or what your world appraisal is. You're the best of this or you're the... Sorry, that doesn't go with me. What goes with me is I'm a very happy man to work for Spirit, because spirits have proved to me time and time again that the reality is so. And I want to be part of that reality. I want to intermingle with it. I want to tell people, get it off my chest, the truth of what I've experienced, and for them to experience as well. And, this is why.
That, Eric, one of my pictures just completely fell over on my windowsill.
Really?
So I don't know if any of the listeners will have heard it, but I've just got a picture that's quite solidly propped up on my windowsill that's just fallen over. And it's very... that falling over is incredibly poignant, which I will tell you off air.
Yes.
I can't let you go, Derek, without clearly talking about the one program that probably has, for a lot of listeners, really opened up people's thoughts in terms of paranormal investigation, that being Most Haunted.
Yeah.
And I know there's been a lot of critique of Most Haunted, but the one thing that came out of Most Haunted was that it opened up people's understanding of the links between spirit and our world.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing. So
I do.
What was probably the most interesting or the most rewarding time for you in the 8 years you did with Most Haunted?
The most rewarding, I think, really, actually, at the beginning, up to probably about the 4th series, I thought not only was it one of the most refreshing things I'd ever entered into, because up to that time I'd only ever linked with, in my demonstrations, on television, on radio, in personal readings and stuff like that, only the goodness and the brightness of the higher side of the world of spirit. Suddenly I'm launched into a challenge, not realizing it was a challenge, not realizing some of the stuff that I'd experienced, or all of us would experience, we're seeing the darker side. And that darker side comprises of one and only one thing. In the lower levels of the world of spirit, God, in his wonderful, wonderful way, has provided a place in that dimension, in that realm, where all the not-so-goodies go when they leave their physical life. And they are there, but in constant vigil are the higher beings, the angelic field, waiting, listening for these souls who are in, like, what we call a squabbling mire, and all wanting to hate each other like they hate people when they were here, still ongoing, their consciousness still wanting to hate, not knowing any better, until they suddenly, if it does happen, dawns on them that they were doing wrong, and they suddenly to call out, I am sorry. I am sorry from their soul that I did what I did, to whom I did it to, and if I could pay back or have my time again, I would like, not just to repent to do. This is where the life cycle of reincarnation comes in. Now, that in its own right is a wonderful, where people talk about the devil, they talk about hell. I had to encounter, on my years with Most Haunted, things, to be honest with you, I didn't quite ever think or believe existed. But I had to experience it physically, mentally. And it was at times quite a horrid experience. However, a greater understanding of God's kingdom and the doings of things. And I accepted that. I accepted, hey, look, now I know all about this stuff. And then I had to then correlate with Sam in his protectiveness, constantly reassuring me if I come across a negative soul that had grounded him or herself, never moved on truly to the realm they should go to for spiritual retribution, judgment from God's side, and they were still, and we had to encounter them, their anger, their outburst of evil, and so on and so forth. And I remember saying to Yvette, I think it was towards the end of the 3rd series, Yvette, now I've experienced this over a period of how many shows? Wow. It was a lot because we did Most Haunted Lives as well. And different parts of the world. I don't think that I want to continue in my capacity as the medium for this program because I've seen now, and really basically I don't want to, I understand it, I don't want to, who I want to link with are the loved ones, 2 loved ones, where there's only going to be happiness and joy. Of course, there's arguments about that, and she's saying, do you realize this show wouldn't be this without you, and this, that, and the other, and the public, you'd be letting all the public and the viewers down. And I even had a conversation, I was called to London with the network, the controller of Living TV, lovely man, and he said, please, Derek, don't even consider leaving me because everyone will turn off. And I said, why? How? Well, because of the mediumship, not the presentation of the show, and, the knowledge and this, that, and the other. So we continued on with it, but the situation got a little bit worse, which I'm sure you're going to ask me the question.
Well, the question I'm going to ask you really is that, and I'm going to leave it fairly open, because I think in our line of work you're going to get critique, you're going to get people trying to trip you up, and I think that you've been through that, and some of that was with Most Haunted, and I think that for many listeners who follow you, Derek, they were. And certainly from in my networks, people were mortified that things had been done in that way, and actually I felt it was quite underhand and unnecessary and a little bit immature maybe.
Well,
but,
can I? I don't use the word sour grapes. It's not within my forte, okay? But the simple truth to all of this, roundup, is I did a 3-hour interview a number of years ago with an American radio station, and things that were happening then, I thought, I was threatened by the program, not by the network, by the program people, the producers, who were Carl Beeson and Yvette Fielding, that I was on a confidentiality clause, and if I said anything negative about Most Haunted, they would sue me. They would take any property, monies, they would just drain me of everything, and I would still be, criticised, that coming out and saying that I was phony, I was this, that, and the other, and what have you. The simple answer to all this is, and I've said it for 3 hours, apart from English radio, is that when Yvette Fielding and Carl Beatty found out, whilst I was still conducting my mediumship on Most Haunted, that Living TV, not them, Living TV, quietly got me to London and asked me would I like to do a new program for Living TV. They would develop the program because the viewers loved me.
Yeah.
And I and my agent sat with them for hours in London. This is exactly what happened. He said, we know that you're on a confidentiality contract, but you can speak to us. Let's do this secretly. You carry on with Most Haunted, go forward, do the 6 series, 3 more Most Haunted lives. We'll draft someone else in, and then we'll announce that you're starting your own new program called Derek Acorah's Ghost Towns. That's exactly what happened. Why I don't see people looking, on social media and reading it up, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was the reason. However, it came from one certain party that had been sacked through cheating.
Yeah.
If people were to take the time out, journalists, reporters, and get in touch with Living TV and see that I wasn't sacked from Living TV. I did Ghost Towns with Derek Acorah. I did Paranormal Egypt after another series. I did work for Living TV for 5 years after leaving Living TV. I was never sacked for anything.
You're not the first person to, first meet. Well, there's been many mediums after you on Most Haunted, and the program has moved on, and you have rightly moved on, and in a really positive way, you've done amazingly, since that, and been in so many different things. And I think, I guess the kind of general sense to that is that. That's one program, and you rightly said you had a good time. You've enjoyed the experience.
I did. I've got no bitter, honestly, in my heart. I haven't got any bitterness for anything. I've been a very fortunate man. The only thing that it just stops, not so much now after all this time, but the only thing that stopped me was it hurt my family, my greater family, more than it hurt me. My wife, my son and my daughter, my grandchildren all saying, Grandad, you're not like that. You've not done that. You're not. And especially my mum, when all this started coming out, Mum went into ill health, and she come to live with us for the last 2 years. And she said, just hold my hand and say, son, these evil people that have done this, they will get the karmic rewards, believe me.
Yeah.
But then again, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Like I said before, and I want the listeners to know, it's not stopped me from working for Spirit, which is my love. If anything, it's strengthened me up.
And I think they're so warm words, because people do get disheartened, and it is the love of working with spirit that drives people on. And like you said, it's those around you that kind of feel the pinch.
If you love something, no matter what you're doing in your life, and you dearly love it, and you get up in the morning and you have that breath of fresh air in your lungs, and you feel as if you're really going to rip the day out and make it good, no matter what you're in, do it. Don't let anyone, I would say to every person ever listening, ever stop you from being you, your individual spirit self within. That's what God's made you.
And truly, Garth, the words, they're just so truthful, so meaningful, aren't they? Just be who you are. Do what you do. Don't worry about other people. Because when you're on your mission, when you're steered your way, you'll know what you have to do.
Absolutely so. Absolutely.
So, what's next for Derek? I know that you're very busy in terms of you're the patron of Pathfinder Guide.
Oh, yes. Very proud of that, yes.
You've also done, huge things for the Anthony Nolan Trust. So, So I need to kind of, bring that to the fore, because you've been incredibly generous with supporting those charities. So, what do they mean to you, Derek? So that and what are they, so that the listener can go and have a look and support them?
Well, the Anthony Nolan, many years ago, a lovely chap got in touch with me and said, I can see the way you are talking about life spiritually. My mother was a spiritualist, not a medium, but a spiritualist. And I've always had feelings to help people, especially children, and especially children where maybe the health authorities in our own country, from Scotland right the way down to the south, haven't got the capabilities to save children, and children are dying at this ratio because of this certain thing, the bone marrow. And I've always hated cancer, like everyone hates cancer, no matter what sort of cancer, and especially if people can't get the treatment for it, or because the National Health can't afford the drug, or secondly, there's not a treatment because they're too, advanced in the illness. But it really struck my heart over children, and they sent me photographs of young boys, young girls that were full of health one moment, and I said, yes, I'd like to meet them. So we went up to Scotland, met the people, seen that they were very sincere, and I said, of course, I'll put my image alongside you, and of course, I'll do shows for you. And I did over a period of, I think, 8 or 9 years, shows where, I'm not bragging, but every penny from the box office went donated to it. And I'm a very proud, happy man that I know to this date, because of the monies that was earned over that period of time, so many children were sent out to America, and that's the great country, sent out to America, and they underwent surgery that saved their lives, and every single one of those children are still living a good life. A lot of them got married, a lot of them had children. Oh, am I excited about that?
Yeah,
that's what I love about Spirit.
Amazing.
They guide me into something, and then, of course, the guide dogs. The dogs for the blind, friends. I've always loved animals. We have our own dogs, our own cats. We have a menagerie here. We have chickens. We have ducks. We have everything. This is the way we are. So, unashamedly, I'd say this is what makes me and my wife and family happy. We're in an environment that, to us, it's like being in the world of spirit, really, because we're happy.
I'll tell you a little story about a guide dog, Derek.
Well, the guide dogs, come on, they are the eyes to the blind.
They're amazing.
And for so long, so long, the guide dogs across the world, and they've done a tremendous, wonderful job, is they've used Labradors for whatever reason. They feel that Labrador dogs are the most ideal dog. Maybe they are. However, I met a lovely blind lady. Her name's Anne Royal. And I was introduced to her by my wife. And she travelled from Scotland, and she came in with her husband, Eddie, and they brought this big dog, big German Shepherd dog. I was like a donkey. It's massive. And she introduced us, and he liked me, and I liked him, and he liked Gwen. We sat down, and our dogs were a little bit reluctant at first, but they got to know each other. And she told us about her quest. When she told us that her charity, she's totally blind herself, by the way, didn't get any central funding, didn't get anything from the government, anything from the lotteries, and it was all like, asking for donations. And her dream, and Royal, was to be able to open a training facility to train dogs, blind dogs, to look after blind people who become friends. They're not just their eyes, they become their buddies, their friends. They're inseparable. Who else would a blind person have outside their dog, snuggling down at night with them, in the lounge and stuff like that, eating with them, and then also taking them out in their responsibility of dogs, so they've got love, not just responsibility, love in their heart for their owner, to look after them, make sure they don't, get hurt. And then of course, you have the situation where Anne, just like myself in mediumship, has been rocked and knocked back by this governmental person, that person. And it's so sad. It's because it all falls back to a guide dog organization that first set off quite a lot of years ago, very successful, has become a little bit, agitated that there's someone, an upstart like Anne Royal, who I must point out again is totally blind, wanting to do this. And all I can put that down to is their monies and profits and stuff like that. Remember, Anne Royal's Pathfinder dogs are not funded. In my shows over the years, I've had buckets to ask people, I do on every show, please could you, even if it's only a penny, it doesn't matter, it all counts. And we've been, doing that. And all the shows that I've done for Pathfinders, just like the other wonderful charity, I've given my total fee to them to help them. And in actual fact, we're going up to Scotland to Anne's in a couple of weeks' time to open up. They've opened up a cafe, a coffee cafe, to help with trying to fund, working for it, fund the help to get this complex. If I had the money, we'd stop there. I'd get the complex built. It's in my heart. Before I pass over this time, I've told Anne, I want to see this built for these dogs, because the most important thing is when a dog that goes in training from a puppy up to the age and its maturity of being with a blind person costs £36,000.
It's a huge amount, isn't it?
Anne wants to open this complex, and with her people, they've worked it out, they can manage to do that and cut that down to about £10,000.
Wow.
That's £26,000 off every dog.
That's impressive.
Isn't it? And you can be certain Gwen and I are going to be still pushing out until hopefully we will see it in our lifetime, this one.
Well, let's hope so, because that just sounds like such an amazing venture. And I think, like you said, you've got dogs. I've always had dogs. They are, and pets generally, they bring so much more than just eyes to a blind person. They are their world.
They're unconditional love, aren't they?
Yeah, I've grown up with them, and I remember doing my studies years ago, and there was a young lady on the course. We were on a social work course together, and she had a disabled help dog, and that dog was absolutely amazing. Just everything was done for her. She was such a help.
Dogs are wonderful. I mean, we've got two here now that are only coming out of pup here now. We got Merlin, that's a nice name, isn't it? And Millie. And they're both from different litters, yes. They're both standard poodles.
Gorgeous.
And they're totally as different as chalk and cheese, very wonderful natures, full of love. Oh my God, unconditional love. You don't have to move out of a room, not go away from them for hours. And Millie's jumping, I go, oh. And Marilyn's saying, oh, yeah, oh, wow. You don't get that from a lot of human beings, do you, Sue?
That's true. I used to take, my son is now nearly 19, but he has Asperger's, and I used to take him to Crufts every year. And there's a nice little display of guide dogs for the blind in Crufts, where children can queue up and they're blindfolded and they're taken around a little obstacle course with the dogs.
Yes.
And we've waited in this queue for some time. And we got right to the front and they said, oh, really sorry, the dogs have got to have a break now. And of course, a lad with autism doesn't wait very long. And I said, look, is there a time I can come back? Because it's really hard for him. And the guy there is a wonderful, beautiful man. He said,
yes,
come back at 5 o'clock, he said, and we'll see what we can do. I've worked with kids with autism. I said, okay, great. So I took him back. He brought out a guide dog called Delphi, and he masked up my son, and he let him walk around the whole arena.
Lovely.
And he said, look at your son. He said, look at the power of trust he has just put in that dog. And he just walked around. He didn't ever go to remove the blindfold. Anyway, so we didn't see him again, and we saw him. We went back the next year, and there he was again. He said, oh, great to see you. Bring him back again at 5. And we did this for a few years.
That's
and
lovely.
Then we didn't go for a couple of years, and it was a bit sad. And I went another year, and I went past the guide dog stall, and he wasn't there, and there was a little bit of sadness. And then I thought, that's a chapter that's moved on. That's okay. It's okay to feel sad about that. That was something that was very special, and it's been, but that's all it is. And as I went round the corner, I bumped straight into Andy and Delphi the dog. And we had another picture of him again with this dog. He's almost grown up with it, but only once a year. And the trust they put in each other is amazing. Just beautiful relationship.
I'd love to hear these stories. They're lovely.
Yeah, very, very warming stories, aren't they?
Mm.
Well, you are a very busy man, Derek. I've already probably taken up too much of your time, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm just looking now on your website, and just to let everybody know that the website is called derecacorah.com, and Derek has got a series of dates now for his 2016 Soul Reunion Tour, some of which have got guests with him on stage, and these dates go right the way through. Derek, you're mad. This is mad busy, right through to December.
I know. But added to, over the last week or so, it's come to my knowledge that a television company, promoters in the United States from the East Coast, have been talking with my agents over, apparently they sent a couple of people over and they come to a couple of my shows, my evenings, and they've gone back and they've drawn something up. So there's a wonderful aspect that I can really, and I've waited for this for so long, where there's going to be television coverage of a number of shows that they are now putting together across the East Coast. I believe New York, Chicago, a number of places, and I'm also going to be in part of a documentary, and it's such. I was speaking to the producer only last evening from America, and they're so excited. Well, they said, "What do you think, Derek?" And I said, "I don't have to think. It's the next stage."
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Derek. Anybody who wants to find out more about Derek or the dates when you can go and see him, please have a look at his website. Also on there, you can link with mediums specially chosen by Derek to give reading Derek's blog. and also support some of the charities that there are links there to support those charities that Derek and Gwen support so avidly. So thank you so much, Derek, for your time. It's been amazing, very humbling. I think I speak on behalf of all of our listeners that you are held in utmost respect in the mediumship world, and thank you very, very much for coming and sharing such down to earth and honest accounts of your life, how you've become who you are, and what else you've got coming forward, really, and able to offer everybody. So thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, Sue. Thank you, both of you, naturally, Alan, and anyone else that's been listening. And thank you for listening to me. I often think that when I speak for too long, I become boring. But that's nice, a reassurance from me. It's like listening to my wife.
I could listen to you for hours, Derek, because it doesn't matter who I speak to, you always learn something from them. I always take something away, and I was so looking forward to interviewing you tonight. So thank you ever so much. It's been great.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much from my heart, okay?
Thank you.
The mission has been completed.
The end! By George, he's got it! It is the end! I'll say it.
This has been a production of the Z-Talk Radio Network.
If you're lying to me, I'll be back.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hi, I'm Christopher Kimball, host of Milk Street Radio. If you'd like to change the way you cook and also think about food, please check out the Milk Street podcast. We travel around the world to find pizza in Tokyo, Egyptian food in Berlin, and Bhutanese farmers in Vermont. We speak to Jamie Oliver, Rachel Ray, Al Roker, Ina Garten, as well as Michael Twitty, Marcus Samuelson, and Alice Waters. And we'll introduce you to recipes that will change the way you cook, from bright pink Tottenham cake to Afghan dumplings to shoyu sugar steak, and that one is direct from Hawaii. It's a whole new world of food right here on Milk Street Radio. Please check us out on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts, or go to 177milkstreet.com.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or show, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.